Netflix has been pushing this new reality show called
Too
What was this Cincinnati?
hot.
Do you want to go and have sex?
Too.
Too Hot to Handle. I'm normally not a big consumer of reality television, but seeing as it's quarantine and there were only 8 episodes and being interested by its premise, I decided I'd give it a shot. And despite hating it all the way through, I watched every single episode. Aside, perhaps, from Smosh the movie,
Is to change the video from the inside.
it might be the most abysmal piece of art I've ever seen. But unlike many other bad shows and films, the reasons it's like that are actually somewhat interesting. And I think they can tell us some things about the true purpose of reality television. Part 1. The ending. Too Hot to Handle was very, very unclear about the rules. We were told a few things. 1. There was a $100,000 cash prize. 2. Kissing, heavy petting, and sex of any kind is not allowed. And 3. Breaking one of these rules doesn't disqualify you, but instead takes away money from the prize. A very important thing we were not told was how exactly that $100,000 was going to be split up anyway. Was there going to be one winner? Would a couple win? Do they all split it? I spent 7.5 episodes extremely confused about this. It turns out the reason they were unclear was because at the end, after a great deal of suspense, they reveal that everyone wins, and everyone splits it evenly. This is, without a doubt, the worst possible ending they could have gone with. I mean, it's anticlimactic and corny, but it runs deeper than that. There was never a good ending for this show. Sure, they could have picked Sharon, who obviously deserved it the most, but it still would have had something missing. That's because the show is designed so that it's producers who choose the winner. And, that's boring. On Love Island, the audience chooses the winner, and that's fun, because we get to participate. On Survivor, the other contestants choose the winner, and that's fun because we sort of get to see people making decisions early on, knowing that they're going to be on the jury. But having the producers pick is, really lame. You could say a similar thing happens on Shark Tank, but I would actually argue that on Shark Tank, the sharks are contestants, too. The best parts of Shark Tank, far and away, are when the different sharks have to compete with each other for an idea they really like. When producers pick the winner, there's an obvious problem. It becomes scripted. Reality competition is so good partly because the winner can't be predicted with certainty. Having the producers, or LANA, decide who wins kind of ruins that. Part 2. LANA. An update of Alexa, which looks a lot like a lava lamp, LANA replaces a host in this show. LANA explains the rules to everyone. Not only is this a bit needlessly cringy, it also ruins yet another beloved trope of reality television: the host. Humans enjoy watching other humans. Explaining the rules is obviously the least exciting part of reality TV. So to compensate for that, most shows get a host who is likable to explain them to us, so it's kind of tolerable to listen to a bunch of exposition. There's also these small moments in reality where the host gets surprised or happy or sad or really anything. It's great. The host is the closest thing to the audience in a reality show, and it's nice when they show us some kind of emotion, and LANA just is not capable of doing that. But luckily, Too Hot to Handle actually thought of that, and don't worry, they have a plan. Part 3. The narrator. The narrator is perhaps the worst aspect of this whole show, although there's a lot to compete with. In fact, there's so much wrong with the narrator, I should probably split this point up. Overcompensation. Remember when I said it's fun for the host to have reaction to the events of a show? The narrator agrees, but takes it way too far. This narrator cares so much and about everything. It kind of takes away from the integrity of the show, as if she doesn't trust us to react without her telling us how to.
The emotions came flooding out in that workshop, but it's giving me that sinking feeling for David and Sharon's friendship.
And to be fair, she's kind of right. Nothing all that interesting happens in the show. There are probably only 2 actual twists, and only one of them seriously caught me by surprise. So it makes sense that the narrator would want to force this emotion onto us. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean it works. The interesting moments were actually dampened by the narrator's remarks, which is mainly because of humor. The narrator turns everything into a joke. Look, I get this show is all about sex. I understand there's a lot of opportunity for the double entendre. But with this narrator, it is just constant. The "that's what she said" jokes never stop. And not a single one is even clever. The most common one is comparing personal growth to some other kind of growth. But there's also the "this blows" and "this sucks." And may I point out, all of these jokes are reused. Literally, the exact same jokes are used multiple times in the show by the narrator. There's also this thing where a contestant will be getting ready to say something, and the narrator will sarcastically guess things that are the opposite of what they say.
David, you shouldn't have. So where are you taking her? A posh restaurant? Maybe to Gay Paris?
I've got this wonderful scene set up for you, so if you want to...
Oh, 5 steps away on a couple of logs.
This happens like 5 or 6 times in the show. And while it was never funny at all, by the end, it actually kind of removes tension from some moments that I otherwise might have actually been wondering what they were going to say. Lack of ambiguity. Another gripe I have with the narrator is that she comments on everything. A big part of the fun of reality shows is watching people interact and not totally knowing what they're thinking. Like on Survivor, my favorite reality show, someone will say at camp, "I just think it's really important everyone pull their weight around here." And when they say that, you kind of wonder, was that a shot at someone else in the group? And if it was, who was it? And did they pick up on it? That's the fun. You get to watch people be passive-aggressive and have all the context. But in Too Hot to Handle, if someone says something like, "I think attraction is a big part of falling in love," the audience would naturally wonder if attraction was meant as a substitute for sex, and if the person was trying to manipulate the person they're talking to. But then the narrator would jump in and say out loud, "I think he means sex. He's definitely trying to get in her pants. I wonder if she'll be able to resist." And it's like, shut up. Let me watch these people and come to my own conclusions. Isn't that the main purpose of reality television? Well, maybe not the main purpose. Part 4. The main purpose of reality television. Reality television is without a doubt the most hated art form in existence. Most people refuse to watch it, and those who do either don't admit it or cite it as a guilty pleasure. It probably sounded weird that I even called it an art form just now, but I think it is. I think reality television, believe it or not, does have artistic merit. Let me explain. Art can be looked at a spectrum between realism and formalism. Realism is like a history documentary, and formalism is like Picasso. All art forms cover a large part of the spectrum. Picasso might be very formalist, but the Mona Lisa is closer to realism, but still not as close as a photograph, and even that isn't as close as like security camera footage. But any given artistic medium tends to center around a certain part of the spectrum. Painting tends to be formalist, photography tends to be realist, film formalist, theater realist. Again, all this is very general. There are realist paintings and films, and there are formalist photographs and theater productions. Reality television, unsurprisingly, skews hard towards realism, sitting all the way over there with like documentarianism. So then, reality television and documentaries have a unique ability to convey people as they really are. The main difference between them is the role of the art in forming these events. Documentaries are very passive. They observe, while reality television is active. It interferes. The perfect example of this is the YouTube sensation What Would You Do with John Quinones.
She thinks she's so cool hanging out with her white friend.
Reality television does something that no other art form typically does. It's a compromise between art and science. It asks, given these circumstances, what would happen? That is the very definition of the scientific method. No other art form is nearly as good at this as reality television. You start out with a question. For instance, if a family becomes rich and famous from practically no effort on their part, what are their lives like? And that's the answer that Keeping Up with the Kardashians attempts to find.
So
The question Too Hot to Handle asks is actually kind of a fascinating one. If a bunch of sex-addicted, attractive people were forced to spend time with each other, deprived of sex, could they form romantic connections? That's what drew me to the show. But here's the problem. The producers tip the scale. It's a terrible experiment because at every juncture, the producers push the contestants to form connections. They have seminars, tell them they might win money if they form connections. It isn't just bad television, it's bad science. The show has decided what the results of the experiment should be before they've even started. And they don't let up until it becomes true. I know none of us watch reality television thinking about the scientific method, but subconsciously we know it's there. And that's what killed Too Hot to Handle. They tipped their hands so much that we too knew what the results were going to be from minute one. It kind of feels like the producers didn't even want a reality show. They wanted, like, a movie. They didn't genuinely start Too Hot to Handle with a question. They started with an answer. Emotional connection, separate from sex, can be difficult, but it's worth it. That's fine. But that's a message, right? When you have a message, you don't make reality television. You make a film. And there's a pretty easy way to do that, too. How about this? Two attractive folks meet at a support group for sex addicts and fall in love. Is that so hard? That could be a great movie. One of them could want to have sex, the other doesn't. And then after some event in the movie, the roles reverse. You know, we get that kind of a thing. It practically writes itself. But to make a reality show where you already know the answer is both disingenuous and, frankly, really boring. Part 5, conclusion. I'm a big believer in constructive criticism, so I didn't want to do this takedown without offering some suggestions about how this show could have been better. Get a host. Get more likable people. Decide on one winner and make the rules clearer. Take your hand off the scale. And finally, embrace the cruelty. Let's face it, the premise of this show is torture. Stop making it about personal growth or whatever, and just admit that you're fucking with people. It would be a lot more fun that way.